So, hello, good morning, first of all. Yes, so after the Muslim skeptic, we have the Turkish skeptic. He says, you are still talking about determinism and free will after being obliterated by Abdul now on this exact topic. And he pointed out a video where I call Hamza's den and I get obliterated on free will. So let's see this video together, guys. I haven't seen this video yet. Okay, let's go. So
Why
that
is that
means
incompatible with free will?
because free will means that it's not the plan of Allah, isn't that right? Because if it was
No,
the plan
no.
of Allah, can
Are you
Allah?
familiar? Are you familiar with Molinism?
No, maybe I am, but I cannot remember this.
Okay, so
This
it's a
term.
position about God's knowledge and free will. So there's necessary
Yes,
knowledge,
yes.
middle
Al
knowledge.
cut.
You know that. Okay,
Excuse me,
so
guys, but
God. If you want to phrase it in terms of like possible worlds, God knows all possibilities, and He knows the free choices of free agents in all these possible worlds, and he can actualize a world that accords with his plan. But the acts of the agents in those worlds are still free. I mean, there's no
yeah,
problem with that.
yeah, but al qadar in Islam doesn't only refers to God's knowledge. Just God knows the future, and therefore he actually wills the future.
Yeah,
So
I
he
didn't say it's just knowledge. So he wills it. Yes. So he wills as in he creates the world.
He wills it in the
But
in the in the perspective that he nothing happens without his permission. So you can make a choice, but it doesn't mean it's going to be fulfilled because Allah can stop that choice. He can stop the thing from happening, but it doesn't affect your choice, and it doesn't affect your action. Just because Allah knows something is going to happen, it doesn't affect your action that you chose to make that act.
yes, but that, as I said, that's kind of a misrepresentation of the problem because even Muslim apologists like Mohammed Hijab said that this is not just about the knowledge of Allah. So Abdul Rahman kind of answered
no,
that.
okay, yeah,
But
well, I agree, and
in
he
a
agrees
kind,
with it too. As so, Allah wills to create and creates the world that He wants to create, knowing that you will freely choose the acts that you will freely choose. That doesn't make the acts any less free. The
yes,
question is what
another
accounts
one.
for the freedom.
So
So it's not, yeah.
yeah, regarding that the punishment of Allah is very severe. Okay, we are talking about eternity in the hellfire. Now you are saying that he's creating multiple worlds, and he chooses the world that people freely choose. That is again hard determinism. Okay, so that is
What's
kind.
hard determinism? Hard determinism is that
Yes,
your, let's say, everything, but in this case, your acts, right,
yeah.
are causally
Atlantica.
determined by prior conditions.
Firstly, note that Abdul Rahman brings forward a philosophical thesis that is not the canonical Islamic position. It's more like a Christian, and even some say a Christian heretical position. I know classical Muslim philosophers adopt a compatibilism position, where free will is compatible with determinism, not a free will libertarian position. So, according to this theory, there are possible worlds where the same person with his free will do all actions. And then God chooses which world to actualize. So, the person with his free will do what God wants. Again, first of all, that doesn't solve free will. I mean, and I'm amazed that even people like William Lane Craig and Plantinga thought that was a good argument. I mean, okay, for example, let's take action B. If the person in this world had really free will, he would have been able to do action C. That is again hard determinism. You didn't achieve anything with this mental gymnastic. You just push back, one step back, the same problem. You just write in more details the same problem. Described in more details the same problem. Okay. In hard determinism, a person in a world can do one action. Now you say there are multiple worlds, but the person again in this world can do one action. It's the same thing, my friend. You did a hole in the water. This is how we say it in Greece. So I don't need to always reference Greece. I don't know why. But I wanted to express this expression. You did a hole in the water. Nothing more. You just moved back the same problem, one step. Not only that, Abdul, I was going to make your life easier with compatibilism, the Islamic position. But you decided to go with a Christian heresy and argue for hard determinism, because that is hard determinism, Abdul. Okay? Sorry. Now, let's go to more problems of this hypothesis. That hypothesis implies that people inherently are able to do all actions. Okay? So, that is insane, my friend. Look now what you are saying. People are made inherently to be able to do all actions. And then God punish the same people that he just admitted are inherently able to do all actions. So let me give you an analogy. Imagine I make a robot and I made it to be able to do all actions if certain conditions are met. And then I choose from billions, from millions, eternity of possible worlds, the world where the conditions are met for the robot to do the action I made him capable to do in the first place. That is God, my friend, choosing who to send to hell. Isn't that right? And then, of course, we have the butterfly effect. The actions of one person affect the actions of all other people. For example, let's take Hitler. Okay, so God decided a world where Hitler kills 6 million Jews. But the effect of this action affects another million deaths, another million evil things. Okay, the butterfly effect. So you cannot isolate the action of a person. The action of a person affects million other actions. Okay, let me give you an example. Hitler, so God actualized the world where Hitler kills 6 million, I don't know, 60 million people. Yes, but in this world, because of this action, the USA dropped the nuclear bombs. Isn't that right? In this world, the Allies carpet bombed, what was the German city? The most evil thing humans ever did. They burnt alive a whole city. What was the city? I cannot remember now. So, actions bring other actions. You cannot isolate the action of a single person. The answer to that is that in a zillion worlds, like a puzzle, the world comes exactly as I predict. But that is stretching reality in limits of insanity. Okay, so and there are other problems that I thought of them a few seconds ago, but now I cannot recall and I'm bored to rethink. This hypothesis doesn't work. Molinism doesn't work.
That are not within your control. Right? So then what that can be denied. I mean,
Yes.
So you can take a compatibilist position, but you can even take like a libertarian free will position with everything you're saying, with God actualizing and creating a world that He wants to create that accords with His plan, with His knowledge of the free acts of free agents in that world. There's absolutely no contradiction.
Yeah. You gave a very an elaborated apologetic that drives from philosophy, but
It's not
as
an
I said,
apologetic. It's just philosophy 101, bro.
yes, that's what I said. But the problem is that if God, as you said, so in other words, you're kind of saying the same thing, but now you are saying that God makes eternal or all the possibilities, and He chooses the possibility that people will choose to go to hell. Let's say they choose the wrong
Yeah, now
actions.
please don't turn this into a problem of evil argument right now. Though, so we can finish this one, then you could talk about hell, right? But
Yes.
yeah, I'm not saying that is what happens. I'm saying it's a possibility. So you saying that it's just an explicit contradiction is just not right. It's just wrong.
Yes,
I'll
but
give you a working example, Socrates Son. Yeah, you're choosing to go to hell.
no, according to the Quran, because
No,
that was God's
You're
plan.
choosing. You're denying the revelations. You're denying the messengers.
No.
You're denying Allah, and Allah's told you the consequences of that action. You've made that decision. You've chose that path.
Yeah, but
Enjoy.
the verses I read to you clearly said that it was Allah's plan, and He willed for me to disbelieve. If and okay, let me read you another verse because
Have you read the Quran, Socrates Son?
yes, of course, not
Right.
from the beginning till the end like a book.
You've not read every letter. Have you read the parts in the Quran where Allah says, "Let those who believe choose to believe, and those who don't"?
Yes, that's why I'm saying. Yes, that's why I'm saying that that's a contradiction. So before you were asking, is there any contradiction?
Why is that contradiction?
Because in one verse it says that we can read again the verses. There are many verses that says that Allah planned for people to sin, and He chose not to guide them.
No. Allah explains the reasons behind what's happening. He doesn't just say, Socrates' son, I don't like you, mate, and we're not Calvinists here. Yeah, you're selected and you're not.
Yeah,
it's based on your actions. It's based on your arrogance.
Okay, so at least we agree that Allah chooses whom to guide. We agreed on that.
Allah sends hidayah to whom He wills to open their eyes, but it's based upon what they do.
Yes.
If you go down on your knees tonight and ask Allah for guidance, Allah could guide you.
Yes,
but you're so arrogant, you won't do that. So you make your own choice.
But so what is the guidance of Allah? Obviously, it's the Quran, isn't that right? And His word. So when you say yes, and the messenger. So when Allah says that He chooses who to guide, that implies that if we assume that His guidance is the Quran, that implies that He chooses to whom He will give the Quran. In other words, can you understand what I'm saying? So unless we assume that.
Look. You know, when someone becomes a Muslim, we don't think that we've made them Muslim. Just our arguments. We believe Allah's given them they've opened their hearts up and they've recognized the fitrah has opened up, and alhamdulillah, Allah gives them the hidayah, the understanding. Some people are blinded by that. Allah blinds some people by that. We know this based upon your arrogance and your actions. But you chose that path. You can't cry.
No, Allah
blinded me because you're arrogant, mate.
No, wait just a moment.
Arrogance. Maybe use an open mind, and maybe Allah will guide you.
Wait just a moment. Okay, let me in order not to take too much time. My question is: does Allah chooses who to guide? That's my question, and the answer is yes, according to the Quran.
Socrates, look, something you and a lot of people like the guest earlier really need to understand about contradictions is that it's very difficult to demonstrate that there's an actual contradiction in let's say any text or a person's position, because people normally don't contradict themselves, right? And the reason it's difficult, so you can't just look for, look there's this word and then there's the negation of it in another verse, contradiction. In order for it to be a contradiction, they need to mean those two words in the same way at the same time.
Okay, guys, so the Quran is filled with this kind of verses, not 1 and 2, maybe more than 10 or maybe more than 20 or even more. Okay, filled. Okay, so Quran 28:56. You surely cannot guide whoever you like, O Prophet, but it is Allah who guides whoever He wills, and He knows best who are fit to be guided. Now, if Allah doesn't guide whoever He wills, then throw the Quran in the garbage. Okay. That is not like quantum mechanics. That is a straightforward one sentence. There is no hidden meanings in this sentence. It's a straightforward statement. So, you surely cannot guide whoever you like, O Prophet, but it's Allah who guides whoever He wills. Now, if you tell me that Allah doesn't guide whoever He wills, throw the Quran in the garbage. Okay? Isn't that so? Now let's go to my argument. Premise 1. Allah guides whom He wills. That's a fact. Otherwise, throw the Quran in the garbage. Premise 2. Allah's guidance is important for people to be saved. Isn't that right? Unless you will say it's not important. So, conclusion. Allah saves whom He wills. That's simple.
Sorry. So you can't do that. You have to read it through a particular lens. Now, what are the possible meanings of this verse, and what are the possible meanings of that? And that's what I mean. The whole discussion of like free will versus determinism, whether it's in a theistic or non-theistic context, is paradoxical in a sense. Right? I mean, so it's not necessarily an explicit contradiction. I mean, the idea is that you establishing the contradiction would require for you to say that this particular verse is understood in this specific way by Muslims, and that other verse is understood in that other way that explicitly contradicts that verse.
Guys, imagine Allah thinking an eternity. He is eternal times more intelligent than Einstein. He has perfect communication skill. Okay, he's not like my retarded little brother that I need to help him, as Abdul claims. So Abdul needs to help a little bit Allah. He can speak if you help him a little bit. He can go to to a teacher for children with dyslexia, and you don't need to be very critical of Allah. He might speak one sentence. An 8-year-old can speak. So we have Allah thinking for eternity, and He says these words: you surely cannot guide whoever you like, O Prophet, but it is Allah who guides whoever He wills. And Abdul Rahman likes us to believe that this might be, no, Allah doesn't guide whoever He wills. What? So Allah cannot communicate a single sentence, a direct sentence, and even that we need to have skepticism. But if that is the case, Abdul, then how is the Quran a guidance? If the most straightforward sentence can be interpreted in 10 different ways, how is the Quran a guidance? It's not really a guidance, is it, then? Moreover, I am addressing the Quranic challenge. So now Abdul says that the Quran challenged people, but with a challenge that doesn't make sense, because it's difficult to find contradictions. If that is the case, why the Quran challenge people for contradictions?
You can't just say, "Oh, look, it says that here and says this." You have to do a bit more work than that.
I agree with that. I totally agree with what you said. But then my argument is that, okay, you can reconcile those contradictions, but that means the Quran and Hadith are not clear. Because we are talking...
Don't say you can reconcile the contradictions. You can say you can reconcile the apparent inconsistencies maybe in your understanding of the text. Or
Yeah.
even in the text, maybe there can be an apparent contradiction, but then it's
Ye-
not.
Yes, Abdul,
It's not
with all
your
due
friend-
no
respect.
contradiction whatsoever. You're reading a
Okay.
contradiction into it.
Okay,
So
so I mean,
Socrates, Mr. Owl, hello.
yes, I'm hearing.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
but
So-
just to show you, like, I'm sure you're aware of this example. Like when you have a teacher in school, the teacher knows the student. The teacher knows what choice the student is going to make. The teacher knows that this student's been doing his homework, this student's not been doing his homework, right? So the teacher writes down from the teacher's knowledge the predictive grades. He says that Socrates' son gets an F, a big fail, and John Fontaine gets an A star. I mean, why not, right? And the teacher writes it down and puts it in the drawer. And then the next day, the children come in, we come in and we do the test. And guess what? Socrates' son gets an F and John Fontaine gets an A star. Now, the teacher's knowledge and prediction did not affect the outcome of the test at all in any way, shape, or form, right? And of course, the teacher's prediction is it's not perfect. It can be wrong. But Allah's knowledge is not a prediction. It's absolute knowledge. And his recording, his writing is certain, right? So this is how the knowledge of Allah and the written knowledge of what's going to happen does not affect our free will. It doesn't affect our choices, except in the sense that things don't happen except with the permission of Allah. Okay? Now, when it comes to Judgment Day, and Socrates, his son, and John Fontaine are stood there on Yom Al-Qiyamah, and we're being questioned by Allah, some people might say, well, this isn't just, because Allah knew what's going to happen. But we're not judged on the book which was written and before the actions took place. We're judged on the books which are on our shoulders after we have personally made them intentions and made them actions and failed the test. It's the books on our shoulders which the angels are recording, which are the ones that we're judged by. Okay, so because I think your doubt is kind of mixed also with the problem of evil, of understanding these type of things as well. So as it comes to it, Socrates' son, we don't have every single answer, but for someone who has Iman, we believe we have enough what Allah has told us in the Quran and the Sunnah to get a gist of understanding. But the main point is that Islam is true, and we have to obey Allah and we have to worship Allah. So the question is, Socrates, what are you going to do about it? Are you ready to accept Islam?
Yeah, let me respond to that.
You are. Are you ready to become a Muslim?
No, not yet, sir. But let
right.
me address what you said, sir. You just addressed the 3 points you said earlier. You never with this example, this kind of example, you are addressing Allah's knowing the future. So, but you are not addressing the problem, which is Allah also wills the future. So the correct analogy with the example you gave is that Allah already written a test, and in fact this already written the test of the student, and the student wrote another test. So this analogy I'm using now, in fact, Mohammed Hijab used this analogy, and said that is that is in fact the problem with Al-Qadr. In other words, the explanation you gave, although very, very good explanation, it only addresses Allah knowing the future. It doesn't address Allah willing the future, and Allah planning, and Allah chooses not to guide people. So that is the difficulty in this case. In other words, can you understand?
But when we come to the outcome, Socrates, just for argument's sake, right? That the outcome is Judgment Day, and the final destination is Jannah or hellfire. Okay,
yeah,
and that is determined on our choice of accepting Islam or not.
Yeah, but we
now if somebody doesn't accept Islam based on lack of knowledge, they don't necessarily go to the hellfire. That's not the point in Islam. Is that not all people who died non-Muslims go to hellfire. Some people have never heard about Islam, okay, or children, etc. They will be given a test on the day of judgment to see if they would have accepted, and if they're sincere, they will pass the test. So it doesn't actually raise a problem because the outcome is still based on your choice.
Yeah, but okay. So I get that. How you explain now is logically sound. Okay, but the problem is that now we need to assume that many verses in Hadith and Quran are not clear, are unimaginably unclear.
No. We've already established you've got a very poor comprehension skills.
Oh,
You don't even understand. You don't even understand what you're reading. We've established that, so we're not going to go there. We're not going to.
Socrates,
I mean, to be honest,
quick question. I just want to know: do
Yeah.
you think, do you think compatibilism in general, like, just let's move away from Islam for a second? Compatibilism is just straightforwardly incoherent. Is it?
No. It's coherent.
Okay,
Yes.
so can you explain what compatibilism is?
Yes, compatibilism is some kind of reconciliation between free will and determinism. In other words,
wait. Okay, now here you're saying that so I could even defend like a libertarian free will view on what you're saying, but I don't even need to do that. Okay, so let's just stick to compatibilism. So
Yeah.
if you think that is not incoherent, as in reconciling determinism and free will, then why are you saying that it's incoherent for God's? Let's assume that your reading of the verses is anywhere near correct. God deterministically willing things and doing taqdeer of things, and for us to have free will in some kind of way that's reconcilable. Because if you think compatibilism is okay, then why you're being inconsistent in your critique here.
No, my critique is although in philosophy compatibilism is a sound argument, the verses those verses in the Quran and Hadith are clear-cut hard determinism. Clear-cut. If you read, for example, let me give.
What is determinism? What is determinism?
Determinism is that all our actions are determined holistically, let's say, totally. Are determined
by prior causes, right?
By a prior cause, yes.
Yeah. Now, what are you arguing that God's will here is doing? It's doing a deterministic sort of process that leads to our acts, right? So you're arguing that Islam is deterministic when it comes to Allah's creation, right?
Yes, according to the verses.
Okay, and then you're also arguing that we couldn't have free will with that determinism, right?
Yeah. First of all,
yeah, and at the same time, you're accepting compatibilism, and you're saying it's not incoherent. So you're just all over the place.
No. If I may, sir. First of all, if we are to make a secular argument, I don't believe in free will. But I am what
That's
I'm now.
You don't believe in free will.
You don't have to believe in free will. You accept that compatibilism is a coherent position. It's not a contradictory position. And you just described the Islamic position right now as compatibilism. And you're saying the Islamic position is contradictory, while maintaining that compatibilism is not contradictory.
Okay, I accept. Yes, I accept the claim of compatibilism. I accept they make this claim, but I don't accept this term applies to Islam because there are verses clear-cut determinism. For example, there are
yes. Okay. Let's assume that, but then there
let
are
me
other
give you
verses.
let me give you an
Hamza
example
mentioned
here.
one for you. You don't need to give me an example because for the sake of argument, I'm telling you that there are verses that are deterministic. Now, are there others that imply free will?
Okay, so
yes,
why is okay?
So now here, one second, Socrates. If you do not have a problem with compatibilism, then what are you doing here right now? I mean, I don't get it because if you're saying that compatibilism, which is a reconciliation between determinism and free will, is an okay position philosophically, whatever that means, but then it's not okay when it comes to Islam, then you tell me what changed.
Just because compatibilism is a sound philosophical thesis, that doesn't mean it applies to Islam. The same way, just because humanism is a sound political thesis, or I don't know, doesn't mean it applies to Nazi Germany. I'm not implying Islam is Nazi Germany. I'm giving a random example. So just because we have a concept which is sound, that doesn't mean it applies to everything. Okay, so fascism is a sound political thesis. It doesn't contradict logic in a direct way. Fascism. That doesn't mean I am a fascist. I am a fascist. Just because the thesis is sound.
When you moved from
Yes.
philosophy to Islam,
Okay,
that
okay.
made one a contradiction, the other not.
Okay, good question. So, what I'm saying is that although in philosophy compatibilism is a sound argument, when it comes to Islam, because of those verses, that about 10 verses in the Quran and 54 authentic hadith of Sahih Muslim, that compatibilism doesn't apply to Islam. Unless you reject 54 authentic hadith.
Tell me why. Tell me why.
Then,
Explain why.
because if you read this verse, let me give you an example, sir.
Because it's deterministic. Don't give me an example. Tell me, just look, if I need the example, I'll tell you, but you could just get straight to the point. Is it because Islam, those verses and hadiths, they basically imply some kind of deterministic view in Islam? It's determinism? Yes, but that determinism is also present in the view that you're saying is coherent, which is compatibilism. So there's no problem with determinism being in Islam.
Yes, but wait a moment.
Alongside free will, according to your position.
Yes. Okay. So, but why isn't those a contradiction? And how you reconcile? Because I can name if I see in one verse.
Reconcile. You don't have a problem with compatibilism. You shouldn't be asking me that. You should be like, well, okay, Islam is compatibilist. Okay, have a good day. That's what you. Unless you're saying compatibilism is incoherent, which you're not saying.
So what I'm trying to say, sir,
and Socrates, you always have this thing where you say it's a sound argument in philosophy. I don't know what that means. Like, what do you mean in philosophy? But then when we take the argument somewhere else, it's suddenly gonna change?
No. What I'm saying is that there might be abstract arguments that make sense. That doesn't mean they apply to a specific thing. So, for example,
what
if I read
no, I'm sorry. You just accepted multiple times that determinism is reconcilable with free will within certain philosophical positions that are respectable. Now, you're not saying anything different in Islam other than there is determinism and there's free will. But the only different thing you're saying is that in this case, it's a contradiction.
Yeah, guys, although Abdul Rahman is very intelligent, because that's a live conversation, he made an error. Okay, let me explain. Okay, and it's in fact a silly error, no significant error. So let me explain what I'm trying to say. So we have these positions related to free will. So we have compatibilism, a reconciliation of hard determinism with libertarian free will, a Molinist position that Abdul Rahman initially claimed, a libertarian free will, hard determinism. Okay, all these positions are philosophically valid. In other words, they don't contradict philosophy in a direct way. So they are valid philosophically. That doesn't mean they are sound. In other words, they apply to reality, to the Quran. Okay, I made it complicated again. That doesn't mean all these positions, which are contradictory, some of them, apply to Islam. That is what I'm trying to say. So, Abdul Rahman says that compatibilism applies to Islam. I say, according to the evidence, hard determinism applies to Islam.
Now, give me that added ingredient in the case of Islam that makes it a contradiction.
Let me give you the added ingredient. If we assume your position right now, that means that by definition there cannot be contradictions in the Quran, because any contradiction you see, you will reconcile that as both things apply. For example,
not any
let me give an example.
This one, no, don't give me an example, because this specific contradiction.
Okay, so
you already accept that it's reconcilable within a compatibilist position. So I don't need to argue with you. That argument is, I don't even need to do that. You already think that you can have a respectable philosophical position where you reconcile between determinism and free will. Now, this is not really rocket science. This is exact mirror image of that in what you're saying within Islam, but somehow there's this magical contradiction you're thinking of that you're not thinking of when you're looking at just, philosophical compatibilism? Give me the added ingredient.
No, the added ingredients is that what you see as reconciliation somehow, I see as direct contradiction. Because if you want, let me give you I want to give the example to put forward this point. If I take a book and in one verse it says the sun is red, and in another verse the sun is yellow, that doesn't mean the sun is orange. That means that's a contradiction. This is what I'm trying to say. That can you understand what I'm saying?
That's first of all, it's a contradiction if it's read and not read at the same time in the same way. Second of all, Socrates, don't go to other examples.
Red, not red, is a direct contradiction. Red, yellow is a contradiction, as I said.
Because you already accept that free will and determinism are in principle reconcilable, or if you don't believe that, you believe that the philosophical position that holds to that is coherent. Now, you don't need to hear from the compatibilist exactly how it's reconcilable. You don't need to hear a metaphysical account that basically explains how they're reconciled. You believe that the position can be a respectable philosophical position. Now, when we take that to the Quran, there is no difference. You see free will and you see determinism, and all of a sudden you're shouting out contradiction. This is just complete inconsistency, and you just
okay. Let's agree. Let's agree to disagree. Let's agree to, because we already.
No, let's agree that you're incoherent.
Are you serious, dude? Are you serious, dude? You are making a silly mistake. That is not a. Okay, guys, let's try again because I don't know. Maybe. Okay. We have many positions that are sound philosophically. That doesn't mean all these positions that are contradictory in many cases apply to Islam. Just because a concept is sound, that doesn't mean it applies to everything. Well, what is the difficult? I don't know, guys. Anyway, because it takes too long, this will be the end of part 1. Tomorrow I will post the part 2. It's very interesting. Now that I see this video again. Thank you very much.